بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على أشرف خلق الله سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه. في الأول أرحب بال participants in this evening. أولا نهدي جميع الحاضرين اليوم، تهدي جميع السعودية الكيمياء الحيوية السريرية جميع الحاضرين اليوم أطيب التحايا وعطرها، ونزف لهم أجمل التهاني بمناسبة قرب العيد الوطني للمملكة العربية السعودية التي وحدها المؤسس الملك عبد العزيز بن عبد الرحمن آل سعود وأرسى دعائم الوحدة والبناء. ونحن ننعم بالرخاء والاستقرار والحمد لله على الأمن والأمان في هذه الظروف الصعبة التي تدور من حولنا في هذا العالم، مما يبعث على النفوس الاعتزاز بالانتماء لهذا الوطن الذي كفل العيش الكريم للمواطنين والمقيمين على حد سواء، ومما يجعلنا في القطاع الصحي نعاهد على المحافظة على المكتسبات الوطنية ومقدراتها وعلى الإنسان كائن ما كان. وهذه الأمسية تعبر عن مشاركة مع المجتمع الطبي تفاصيل الأزمة التي عصفت بالعالم من حولنا. طبعا هذه I'll talk in English because our speakers will be presenting in English. I would like to welcome you in this scientific evening sponsored by the Saudi Society of Clinical Chemistry. This is the fourth Journal Club meeting for this year under the theme Laboratory Transformation Post-COVID-19 Pandemic. This is going to be an activity sponsored by Al Burj Laboratory, where we have two distinguished speakers. We have, first of all, Dr. Ula Al-Ghaddar. She is the Chief Medical Officer at Al Burj. She is well known with STEAM presentation and very strong scientific background. She will be presenting the first part of the presentation on the impact of COVID-19 post-pandemic on laboratory medicine. This is quite a big topic, and actually there's a lot of events that happen both in the government sector and the private sector, and actually during COVID-19 it showed a unity between the governmental and the private sector, where both benefit from the resources available for each of them, and showed solidity against this pandemic. So without further ado, we have Dr. Ula Al-Ghaddar, and then we will be followed by Mr. Zulfiqar Sheikh, who is the Chief Operating Officer. So Dr. Ula Al-Ghaddar is going to be presenting the medical side of the story, and Zulfiqar will be presenting the operational and management part of the story. So first of all, Dr. Ula Al-Ghaddar, the podium is yours, please.
Thank you, Dr. Zuhair. Good evening, everyone. Assalamu alaikum. Thank you very much for inviting me to this session. I will be talking about, as Dr. Zuhair said, the medical laboratory and the impact of COVID-19 on it. So let me start by sharing the screen. So actually, all of us were hit badly with the pandemic. So things started rapidly. First, masks and hygiene. We saw this, it's a very sad thing that we wouldn't have imagined that we would see ever, the empty Kaaba. And then closed everything. All the public spaces were closed. All the schools were closed. Then things started to, testing began. So it began as a sporadic testing, and then mass testing centers were present everywhere. And then the vaccines started to appear finally, when we were told actually by the CDC and by everyone that once the vaccines are there, this is the end of the story. Actually, the vaccines came. Most of the people became vaccinated. I mean, the latest statistics are saying that more than 50% of the citizens and residents in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia are already vaccinated, but still, it's not over yet. Talking about medical laboratories and how this thing affected it. So today I will go through the effect on laboratory professionals, on manpower, on supply chain, research and development, regulations, relationship with patients and physicians, information technology, lab utilization, and what's next. First, on the laboratory professionals. So we were always behind the scene. Laboratories are releasing over 13 billion tests annually, which drive 2/3 of the medical decisions. Laboratory directors became important guests now in hospitals' executive leadership meetings to provide updates and needed requests. You see, usually those who are under the spotlights are from the medical team, physicians, maybe nurses, but the laboratory was always, behind the scene. Now, the laboratory role became very obvious. A lot of financial restrictions that were present before were lifted now, allowing the purchase of equipments and analyzers. So it became very rare that a hospital laboratory is requesting something for COVID or any special request for COVID, and it is not accepted. Lab professionals became a part of multi-functioning teams. So now people are working in multidisciplinary team in the lab with the clinicians, with the nurses to give the best patient-centered care. Also, there was a change in even the personal criteria of the laboratory professionals. A lot of things were acquired, such as leadership, communication skills, creativity, flexibility, perseverance, and resilience. Some negotiation and change management skills were also acquired during the pandemic due to the daily and quick decision making became the norm. So I'm not saying that laboratory professionals or laboratory managers didn't used to have these skills, but people were, or the laboratory professionals were mainly into day-to-day things like quality control, error elimination, turnaround time reduction. But now with the cost, and actually also under the pressure of cost reduction, we were running in a limited lab space with selected test menu that meets the local needs. So if you have a lab, if you have a hospital lab, or if you have a standalone lab, there is a limited space. You try to select the menu that covers the local needs, whether the needs of the hospital, whether the needs of the community. So it is a limited test menu, or even if it is a large test menu, but still we are producing a certain number of tests per day. But now there was a change in the concept. All of us were under the pressure to do rapid expansion of our testing capabilities. Of course, I'm talking mainly about COVID-19 testing using PCR. Moving to the manpower. So the pandemic exacerbated an already existing issue. We have a lot of work to go around and not enough skilled, educated people to get the job done. It was very rare that I found a laboratory, whether in a governmental sector or in a private sector, where they are assuming that they have enough people. It was never enough. Usually we need more staff here, we need more staff there. With the pandemic, everything became more exacerbated. We faced recruitment challenges as never before. All of us had to use part-timers, and with the part-timers, usually we face a problem of commitment. Of course, I'm talking about my personal experience, and I would be very happy to hear from all of you at the end. But part-timers usually are not committed to the job. Sometimes we are arranging schedules, and the one who is supposed to come to take over the job, he just doesn't show up. And I see this is a huge problem when we were hiring part-timers. And technologists were transferred from all lab departments to COVID testing units. So it became very normal that the people working in the chemistry, people working in the hematology, people working in the microbiology, even everyone was dedicated to the testing units. Of course, starting from the swabbing, sample processing, and finally the molecular biology unit itself. Also, the market salaries increased. You see, the demand increased on the laboratory professionals, especially the skilled ones. So the salaries increased. So we are facing a problem of shortage and salary increase for the people who are already existing. Competency issues arise because there was no enough proper training, no enough onboarding. So usually when you are hiring a laboratory professional, you take your time, like, for example, there's a training program, condensed training program, and then a detailed one. If they are going to work in a regular or in a routine laboratory unit, what if we are talking about a very sophisticated unit like molecular biology? Usually they should take a very long time, be trained with other experienced or other senior lab technologists. But in our case here, there was no time actually for a proper training. People were trained and then they were put into, uh, you know, the battle like this. They started working with whatever competency they acquired. Yes, most probably they were working supervised by some senior staff, but again, with a shortage in mass testing, this was not always available. So we can assume that the manpower demand in medical laboratories was the highest ever during the COVID pandemic. Moving to another important point with its supply chain, and I'm sure that the supply chain was very painful to every one of us. One of the greatest challenges during the pandemic was actually the supply chain shortage. Severe shortage of machines, reagents, supplies, and even personal protective equipments. So when the pandemic started, no one said, so let's assume that we are talking about Kingdom of Saudi Arabia here. When the pandemic started, the testing or the molecular testing for the COVID, it was only something related to the government. The government was the only entity doing the test. And there was no talks or anything about the private sector taking a part of that. So any lab that, at least that I know, used to have their machines, their molecular biology machines, their PCR machines that they used to use in the routine testing of the molecular biology. Well, it was related to the size of the lab, the scope of the lab, but again, there were machines designated for routine molecular biology as per the current scope of this lab. Now, the same machines were directed to COVID, and COVID was not like any other molecular test at that time. It was not like any other molecular test where you are running maybe 10 tests, 20 tests per day, hundreds of tests, and then thousands of tests start to came into the laboratory with limited machines and definitely limited reagents for the COVID. It was only one company in the beginning of the pandemic for almost a month in the kingdom that was providing COVID tests, and then things started to come along. Supplies and PPEs, even the supplies, even the viral transport media. No viral transport media was present for a very long time. I remember when I had to get sterile tubes and then sterile saline and then a regular swab to put it. So this is a viral transport media that you used to use because we didn't have the regular one available. Challenges in equipping the labs due to the lockdown. So if you want to, this is a lab, I'm going to build a molecular biology unit now in the lab. There was a lockdown. There was, if I want to build a lab in the south, for example, or in the north, anywhere. So companies had problems moving their machines. If they have them in the stock, there were problems in moving the machines and reagents. There were problems in moving the engineers and the technical support team to this. So challenges even if the machines were present. Equipments and reagents back then were sold at very high rates which made the molecular testing unaffordable in many countries or in many settings. So what we are getting now, or not now, maybe 2 months ago, free versus reagents, like what we do in most of the laboratory equipments. Back then, we used to purchase very high equipments was at a very high cost, and the reagents were extremely costly. Again, I'm talking about Saudi Arabia. Maybe back then the COVID test was sold at maybe 1,500 Saudi riyal, which is a very, it's a very high price compared to other countries and compared to today's price, of course. It was very difficult to forecast quantities. So now I have the machine, I have the setting. Now I need to commit to quantities of reagents if the reagents are available. So the difficulty in the forecast led to either reagent shortage or overcommitment with financial burden when it comes to certain agreements with vendors. Prices dropped markedly with releasing new reagents. So at the beginning, the prices were very high when there were no reagents. And then it dropped markedly with releasing new reagents and machines from the pipeline. And then many countries in the region started offering the test for free. So the demand dropped again. So here in the kingdom, anyone can go and book an appointment in the drive-through of the government and go and do the test for free if you feel unwell, if you feel that you contacted someone, or even if it's like a checkup. I think now every 5 days or every week, I don't recall the interval, but you can do at least one test every 1 week. So the demand on the private sector, again, it dropped. After that, with the borders opening, COVID PCR became mandatory. Mandatory if you are moving from a place to another. Then a huge demand happened. Lots of laboratories invested in molecular testing, and prices started to drop again because now everyone was providing COVID testing, though there is a great demand, but again, everyone was providing it. So the prices again dropped. Well, when we mention the supply chain and the shortage of reagents, it's wise to mention some practice like pooling, when you are pooling samples in order to perform the COVID PCR test. So this is debatable because bottom line here, if we are operating in a country and there is a clear or there are clear regulations that pooling is not accepted or pooling is not allowed. So the who mandates these things in Saudi Arabia is the CDC. So if the CDC till date are prohibiting pooling and saying that pooling is not accepted. So in Saudi Arabia, for example, I have a cost per test, let's say it's X, while in another country like United Arab Emirates, they do allow pooling, and it's a pool of, let's say, 5, for example. So assuming, which is not the case, but assuming that the cost per test is the same, so I'm going here to bear 5 times what my colleague in UAE are bearing for the same exact test from the same exact company because of the pooling. Since many countries now are allowing vaccinating again, now countries are allowing vaccinated travelers in without PCR. So the testing demand dropped again. So one month back before, or 1.5 months back before, countries like Egypt, for example, are allowing travelers into the country. So travelers into Egypt used to have PCR while entering the country, whether they were vaccinated or not. Now, fully vaccinated travelers can travel without PCR, which make the demand dropped again. Moving to another part, which is the research and development. So the research and development was one of the interesting areas during the pandemic. First, several countries worldwide locked the research centers down. Now I'm talking about the research in general, not the research related to COVID-19. So countries worldwide locked the research centers. A lot of clinical trials were temporarily halted. So a lot of things that were supposed to be released early 2020, they were not released till now, maybe. Things stopped. But on the other hand, this allowed a lot of research centers, or the government actually, they funded the research centers into one single area, which is COVID testing, which led to a lot of laboratory developed tests, LDTs. Some laboratory developed tests were developed in certain laboratories in the world. A lot of universities actually developed this. A lot of private labs developed this. Actually, we developed this in our lab. We developed one laboratory test for COVID. Maybe we are going to talk about it in the discussion later on. And there is one problem if we are talking generally about research and development here, and for the LDTs, which is insufficient validation. So usually the laboratory developed tests should undergo a very tedious process of validation, which takes a lot of time. But again, due to the limited time and because of the authorities, we're actually encouraging these types of tests to face the shortage in the regular supplies. So we assume that insufficient validation was done, which leads to the regulators and what happened with the regulators. So the FDA, which is the primary regulator here, they started to release the emergency use authorization for certain tests. For the use of new viral tests to detect SARS-CoV-2 virus. Well, they say that during the public health emergencies declared under Section 564 of the FDNC Act, the FDA is able to issue emergency use authorization when certain criteria are met that allows for the use and distribution of potentially life-saving medical products to diagnose, treat, or prevent the disease, which can include viral tests. So almost every single test that was released during the first 6, maybe 8 months of the pandemic, it didn't get FDA approval, but it was mainly emergency use authorization. Of course, some tests moved from the emergency use to the fully FDA approval, but not all of them. Another important thing during the pandemic, which was the relationship with patients and physicians. So patients during the pandemic, they preferred standalone labs rather than going to hospital-based labs or labs that have phlebotomy sites away from the hospital setting and those with home collection services. So this become like the preferred place where patients go for any checkup, maybe. Of course, the home collection service, they were used heavily during the pandemic, but even if the patient can go himself or herself to the lab, they would prefer a standalone lab so that they won't get, of course, they have a sense of getting into a hospital will expose them more to more infection. And then after resuming the regular appointments, after things starting to rest a little bit, so resuming the regular appointments, physicians tended to order a lot of tests to cope with the missed follow-ups. So there were a lot of missed follow-ups during the pandemic, so the testing started heavily. And here, of course, I'm talking about tests other than the COVID-19 testing. Labs had to expand the patient-centric experience and make it as virtual as possible, where the tedious, long registration process with all the paperwork involved in it became unacceptable. So patients visiting the lab, staying in the reception area, waiting for the registration, a lot of paperwork, these things were not accepted widely, either because the patient doesn't want to stay in a crowded place for a long time, being more and more exposed to COVID, or because the virtual makes things easy to everyone. So things tended to go into the virtual part. Also, the pandemic increased the awareness of the patient with the importance of medical laboratories. I see that during the pandemic, again, the same statement that I started with, we were never that seen before. People now are very much interested into laboratories. Laboratories are like life-saving for everyone. Even if you are traveling for a vacation or something, you have to go to the lab to get your test done. Moving to the information technology, and I will just touch base and leave it to my colleague Dhul Faqqar, as he will be talking about the digitalization in the medical laboratories. So online booking system and online websites for booking COVID-19 testing is now everywhere and everyone is using it. Also, we have to release our results and integrate our results on certain platforms related to the government in each country. Here it is Hasn in the kingdom. So a lot of integrations are now being done between the lab platforms or the laboratory information system and places like Hasn, where the results should be released in a certain specific time as mandated by the CDC. For the lab utilization and how the pandemic affected the lab utilization, you see, when the pandemic started, let's say in March 2020, there was a drop of most of laboratory test ordering, almost all the laboratory tests, except a bunch of tests that started to appear somewhere, like D-dimer, C-reactive, interleukin-6, procalcitonin. So some tests started to emerge, and it differed from one practice to another, which led us to the fact that we had a lack of approved protocols for managing the disease. So if you're suspected to have COVID, or if you're actually proven to have COVID, what are the tests to be done for you? Is it a common protocol? Everyone is accepting this protocol everywhere, worldwide? No, this is not the case. So again, we faced shortage in some reagents that we never had shortage in it before. Actually, interleukin-6, nobody ever requested interleukin-6 was this exact. Some studies are saying that those specific tests experienced almost 260% increase in the rate of ordering them in some labs in some countries worldwide. Most of the lab resources became directed, again talking about utilization, most of the lab resources became directed to COVID testing. Even some labs ventured on molecular testing for the first time. So a laboratory that was running chemistry, hematology, and microbiology maybe, and they never invested in molecular biology, they started the investment now. They opened now. They started doing the tests now because it was an opportunity. And finally, there was an increase in the utilization of referral laboratories. So if I'm a big lab, I started to use my referral laboratory more than the way I used to use it before the pandemic. Because most of my resources now including the manpower, are directed towards COVID. Most of my people, my staff, they got infected at a certain time and they had contacts. So I'm always short in staff. I'm always short in resources in general. So resources were directed towards COVID, and some tests that were done in-house in a lot of labs were now outsourced and went to other referral laboratories. So moving ahead, how do we make any benefit of what we had over this during this year or during this 18 months? Technology expansion. So we brought the instruments, we expanded our capabilities, we have the machines, we have the trained staff now. With increased technical capabilities, we are able to expand the laboratory test menu. So this is a PCR machine. I can run COVID on it, and I can run hundreds of other tests on it. I can expand my test menu, allowing for a reduction in the send out test and lower the reference laboratory cost, and increase versatility and revenue creation through expanded in-house testing. Also, the information technology and what we experienced in the information technology, newly established interfacing capabilities, experienced in the rapid instruments and IT deployments, all this can be used in the future, where any additional support or any additional interface that is used for laboratory customers, for physicians, for offices, and for other hospital information system. Now we have the infrastructure, so we can use the infrastructure applied to any other thing. Thank you.
So that was excellent, Dr. Ola. That was Dr. Ola Al-Ghaddar, Associate Professor of Chemical Pathology at Alexandria University, talked about the impact of COVID-19 on the world of medical laboratory. So we've seen how the lack or the shortage of resources, the shortage of human resource, or the expertise of our technicians wasn't meeting the expectation of the pandemic, and how we would benefit from the transformation in the digital world. So now you set the scene with all of those challenges that are facing us as laboratorian, and the second section of the presentation will be about the digital transformation in the medical laboratory. And we have with us Mr. Zulfiqar Sheikh, who is the Chief Operation Officer at Al Burj Medical Laboratory, who is going to speak about the digital transformation in the journey that he has also took part of in Al Burj Laboratory. Please, Mr. Zulfiqar.
Thank you, Dr. Zuhair, and good evening to everyone. And thank you, Dr. Ola, for very informative and very practical approach what she has demonstrated. Now, when we talk of laboratory, the laboratory is largely dependent on technology, because all of you are aware that technology plays very crucial role, which is a backbone. And Dr. Ola has also touched upon the very important point on the use of technology. And I will take you through to various aspects of digitalization, which is very prominent now in our sector. Now, my session may not be so interesting like Dr. Ola, because it is going to be too much of technical. But I'm not going to be more on technical. Maybe I will talk more about the practical, the example, what we see today in laboratory, which is impacting the customer experience, the overall user experience significantly. So allow me to share my screen with all of you so that maybe we can take the journey ahead.
While you're doing that, Mr. Zulfiqar, let me just tell our audience that this activity is actually created for 2 hours CME, and it will be available to you via a link sent at the end of this presentation and on your email. So once you fill that application and insert your number, you will receive 2 hours CME from الهيئة السعودية للخصائص الصحية.
Dr. Zuhair, to confirm, is my screen available for you?
Yes, clear.
Thank you, Dr. Zuhair. So we are going to talk about impact of digitalization, particularly on laboratory medicine. Maybe today, if you see the relationship between the laboratory and referring physician, and then third important player is a patient, you will largely see that it is a relationship which is a back-end relationship. Laboratory plays hidden champion role in overall process, and largely laboratory is not visible to patient. However, the future relationship between laboratory and the patient and the physician is going to be significantly different, and it is going to be affected by digital health initiative. However, we have seen significant change thanks to maybe a blessing in disguise, that because of COVID, whatever we were supposed to do in 5 years, we have started doing. All the laboratories and laboratory staff, they have started using digital in 5 month time. So very importantly, that laboratory medicine current status and the future which is going to be, it is going to be significantly different. Now when you see without medical context the full virtue of diagnostic laboratory information, it cannot be appreciated by any customer or patient, because it is not giving him any optimal value for him. Meaning, when today customer walks into your place, largely his behavior compared to historical is very different. When earlier he used to walk into your center, he was very comfortable, he was roaming here and there. Today when he talks about if he want to come to me for his hemoglobin testing also, he is worried that laboratory is a place where there are a lot of patient or customer must be coming for COVID testing. So whether it is safe for me or not, social distancing, use of hand sanitizer, everything is for him very difficult. What he feels practically is that, can I have some tools in my hand, or can I have a journey which makes me very comfortable, maybe sitting at home, sitting at my place, sitting at my office, if I can get in touch with laboratory. So this is the today's psyche which is changing very significantly in terms of customer experience. We will come to user also, which is our internal user. But however, currently if you see, the treating physician is very well connected with patient, and patient has no other say but he has to go. However, we have seen the change in terms of a relationship between treating physician and patient also, that they do a lot of telemedicine, they do a lot of teleconsultation. Similarly, the efficiency of laboratory diagnostic testing, particularly during clinical decision making process, is going to be very significantly different because of digital health initiative. So in continuation, if you see the digital journey, right from access to medical record, because we are part of medical record when customer walks into the patient walks into the hospital, and when he goes to the treating physician, from there to the data record, everything is linked, and it is access which is called a patient physician laboratory, which is very important. Today it is a very linear axis which is going to be triangular, because lab will also play a very significant role in terms of convenience, in terms of comfort to the customer. Now, when we talk about laboratory and when we see how laboratory is defined today, that laboratory is largely an analytical wing, which is considered as a testing wing. However, when you see the digitalization, I will give you some example, you will find that it is not only the digital wing of healthcare ecosystem, it is also very integrated, and the complete ecosystem in which lot of interpretation is being done because of laboratory effort, because of the laboratory tools which are available. Give you example, all of you are aware of digital histopathology. At the earlier days, the histopathology and today's digital histopathology, it is completely significantly different, which is reducing burden on overall all pathologies, and also improving customer experience. Similarly, if you see, there are multiple things which we talks about our own laboratory. We are talking of trend report, that today there are trends available, that last 6 visit, last 5 years you have visited me, and I have a data which says that what is the trend which are visible from your result. Very specifically, if we have to talk about the customer who is walking into laboratory, customer who is coming to hospital, his HbA1c level, which is available for today's visit, but if we can give him last 6 visit data, it will be very, very helpful for him, not only for him, but for his treating consultant also. Similarly, correlation which are becoming very, very evident as it progress. However, when you see the overall understanding in laboratory staff, when we are talking of artificial intelligence or big data analytics, awareness is not very significant, because still we are in the era of learning, understanding, and start using. Specifically, if you see one of a study which I am quoting here, which is done by American Society of Clinical Pathology, this is very recent, where they said that almost 80% of respondents, they say that they are somewhat familiar with artificial intelligence and how can that be used. It's a huge number which is even not very significantly familiar. However, only 4% classified themselves as an expert because they were working in digital histopathology or into digital hematology. So this is the current status, and future is completely going to be different, because this data, patient is going to have his own data in his hand, and he will able to take good decision in terms of his visit or in terms of his disease progression. So coming to the pillar of future plans, maybe it is not going into so much of technical detail, but these are four important pillars which are going to make difference. Now, when you see the entire business process, you will find that there are business strategy, which is enabled by IT, and there are business driver in IT strategy. Both are working parallelly, because IT, particularly digital enabled business strategy, will drive overall lab business, and lab business will enable digitalization. So both are interdependent, and they will align with each other for very specifically for planning, and in terms of architecture planning, and overall governance and organization, and importantly the technology investment, how being done by any lab. So importantly is that today we are not at a stage where we have you will not find largely the lab in our area which is having separate arm which talks about digital strategy planning department or digital strategy planning initiative. Similarly, there are investment required in terms of technology, because ultimately it will help you in compliance and risk management. It will also help you specifically technical governance and tactical governance also very significantly. If we go to the what are the business need very specifically when we talk of digitalization, now any stable application which is required, which should be scalable, and minimum downtime, this is the any requirement. Today if we go to lab, downtime is virtually zero. Labs work for 24 hours, and lab like us, which is a biggest lab, there are multiple places we have lab which cannot afford to be have any downtime. So digitalization will be a very, very important for this business need, particularly of business continuity and scalability. Similarly, if you see the effectiveness and efficiency of whatever processes what we are driving in terms of consumer experience, in terms of reporting and dashboard. Today, if you want to see the turnaround time of laboratory, that in which department which test is getting delay, how can we identify so that this turnaround time can be corrected. This is one of a big research area in terms of digitalization which is happening globally, and very shortly we will see in our region also the kind of effort which is being made in terms of tracking specifically turnaround time, then the overall consumption, kit utilization index. These are the few digital initiatives which are very significantly needed in our business. Similarly, if you see of entire data, that today any lab or hospital has got huge database. Now this database, securing this data should not be in breach or gone out. So data security, which is one of a significant part of digitalization generally. And very importantly, which now concept which is coming up significantly in international market, which is being radiated in multiple regions also, is a single view for the customer. Today customer, if he want if he's coming to me from last 10 years, he should get complete view of his health status for entire family in one go. And this is why, this is when we talks about multiple chatbot, we talks about the mobile application which is available, which gives larger view. Similarly, if you see a consolidated infrastructure, faster rollout, optimal infrastructure cost, and better end user computing hardware, and in terms of laboratory, when we use our entire technology, the how the technology is connected, and how the issues are being reported to higher management or the user is significantly important. And these are very, very well stated business need for our laboratories. However, when you go to need which are unstated, which is not being significantly addressed, which is going to come up very significantly, is importantly open architecture, which I'm not going into detail because it is very much technical. However, there are a lot of third party application which is very useful in terms of patient experience or patient engagement tools. As a laboratory, as a company, you cannot develop that tool, but you would like to have that third party tool. Now you should have an open architecture which will be able to connect all third party application into your own laboratory information system, so that you need not to go out of your system, and your data is very much secure. Similarly, mobile platform, which are very important. Now these are the platform under which lot of application will run. You will have application for your customer, you will have your internal applications for your logistic team, you will have internal application for your home visit team, and this all are integrated into one, so that when customer is booking a visit from his mobile application, he will be able to see where is my home visit technician, where has he reached, how long it is going to take, which we call it Uberization, which is very, very important. Similarly, CRM, customer relationship management implementation, call center is very important part of any lab business. And when we talk of customer relationship management tools, these are the important tools which completely give you overview of what is happening in your call centers, how many calls are received and how many went unanswered, so that you can call back. Also, you will able to see that how many customers were responded in less than 1 minute time, so that you efficiently use your staff and you give immediate information to your customer without keeping it for waiting. Now, cloud strategy, I'm keeping it pending. Maybe I'll talk last, but master data management and standardization of policies, which is very, very important. Today, master data in our laboratory is very, very important. User-based access system, which is very important, that I want hematology department technician or hematology department staff need to review only hematology related result and not anything else, no genetic data, which is very important. It is a part of a lot of ISO practices when governance is required of user-based access system. Now, cloud strategy, this is one of a significant, everything when you combine and when you go to cloud, which is much more secure, much more scalable, much more easy to access platform. This is one digitalization which is significantly, which I am happy that Alborg is also taking significant step in terms of putting cloud strategy. Now, when we lead to the drivers of digitalization, these are all a driver. Maybe I'm not going into detail of everything, but very importantly, the simplicity is very, very important driver. Today, the way Dr. Ola explained, it is very practical. It looks day-to-day work. But when I'm talking of digitalization, it is going into too much of technical. This is the complexity of digitalization, that it's a very complex process. It's a very complex subject. However, unless and until you make it very simple, you make it easy for user to understand, your customer for operate, then you will be successful. Otherwise, it will become very complex process and we will not able to understand. Today, if you talk of Alexa, if you talk of Siri, you talk of Google, people love using it because ease of access and simplicity, the way it is working. That's why it is very important that key technology architecture driver will be simplicity. And of course, it should be innovative, because without innovative, nobody will accept. You need to offer something something which is innovative to your user, to your customer, then only it will also give you much more long mileage. Importantly, entire framework, whatever we are talking, the digitalization comes with one of a high risk. The risk is security. That whatever you are talking, digitalization is all about data, all about payment, all about multiple data point, which you don't want anybody else to see. So very important is the security framework of your architectural drive, which is going to make significant difference. Now, one of the important part which is being talked very significantly in digitalization is sentiment analysis. User today, how user is taking whatever is being used, how your customers are feeling about it. Unless and until you have analysis of this, any digitalization is not going to be successful. And lastly, it should be very, very important. It should be handy. It should be in the hand. So whatever you today, if you look from any age, child to teenagers to adult to old age, you will find people loves using mobile, something which can be in hand, something which can be used very significantly, which is mobile friendly, which is a platform driven, and which give complete significant user interface. This is the architectural drive of digitalizing process. Now, when we go digital, largely when we go digital and when we start thinking that am I successful or what way I am going to monitor, there are a few important metrics which need monitoring significantly. First one is the operational metrics, which is very, very important. How is the response time and what is the uptime, whether it is being using some kind of downtime which is giving user an unconventional way. Similarly, what are the incidences on production side that operational metrics are being met. Similarly, when you talk of delivery metrics, it talks about complete satisfaction. Cost is very important part because laboratory we invest heavily on technology. And project delivery, that whatever is the SLA, whatever was the significantly expected from the project, are we able to deliver this to customer or not? And this is not from the company side or institute side. This should always reflect from the side of consumer or customer, whatever you call, or the user, which is our internal user. And very importantly, financial metric, all of you are aware that how costly is it, what is the cost benefit ratio, and is it improving or is it efficiently using some of the opportunity which was not met without digitalization. Similarly, security, which I already spoke, that it should be significantly secure, and it should have capability of securing whatever data or whatever work framework we have created. And lastly, and very importantly, that customer service metrics. So what are the repeat incidences? That suppose somebody is coming to my WhatsApp chatbot and he want report, he is putting all the data, but 99% of time he is getting report, but 1% of time he is not receiving report. This is one which is incident recording and how fast we solve. And if it is getting repeated in other customer, this is the failure of technology which can make customer very uncomfortable. And lastly, overall everything, all metrics will work around one part, which is the customer satisfaction score, that how your customer is feeling that you have added some value to the life of your customer. So this is on key performance metrics. Similarly, when we move to next slide, it talks about key element. Now, all of us are aware this is not largely related to digitalization, but people, technology, and process. These are the three key elements which is going to make difference. And when we talk of these three key implementation drivers, there are people, technology, and process. People, they are important because they will drive the strategy. Similarly, processes will take care of change management and project management, and technology will take care of compliance because system audit and review and system identification and selection will largely driven by technology. So if you combine people, process, and technology with your strategy, compliance, and overall project management, this key implementation driver will lead you to success. Now, this is all about concept, but when we see what are the major happening, which is one by one, I will give you example. Enterprise resource project planning. This is we talk about ERP, where we use multiple ERP, SAP, Oracle, or Microsoft. However, this is significantly helping brand in terms of overall digitalization of inventory, consumption, and the purchase order, purchase requisition. A digital journey of a lab is combined ERP, which is a back-end processes, and lab information system, which is a front end. When both combine together, it gives a significant journey to any laboratory. Similarly, the concept of enhanced report, this is a complete digital approach for test result. Today, customer is coming to you for your wellness also. And when you are talking of wellness, when you give him report, you give him a value that XYZ test, and this is the value. For him, this is not important. He need help of somebody to guide him that whether he need to go to doctor immediately. Customer with variation in creatinine level need to go to his consultant immediately. So somebody need to guide. And when we talk of this thing, the support through digitalization, it talks about as soon as he receive the result, he is able to see that some areas which is appearing as a very red and dangerous, which he need to go to doctor immediately. Report also says that what are the important factor he need to consider. He need to consider his diet properly. He need to consider his exercise regularly. Suppose the patient with abnormal cholesterol level, there is a diet restriction, there is an exercise which is required for him, walking is required for him. This is if we are giving him readily available in report form, it is going to be very significantly. And there are multiple AI system which is available, and I'm very pleased to share with all of you that Alborg is using this AI system, in which when a customer comes to me and he is doing wellness package, he will get complete package report, which not only include the value of testing, but it will also give complete a recommendation on diet, exercise, and the what are the next steps he need to do, whether he need to go and meet doctor immediately, or he can go within some time. This is not only prepare for this is individually based on every individual's test result. Algorithms are working and creating separate reports, so you will not find two report similar unless and until age is same, the all reports are values are same, then only. Otherwise you will find every report which is different from each report. And this is the beauty of AI system, which target individual as an individual, not as a journal, that this is the report which is available. Similarly, WhatsApp data analytics or AI, which is we call it WhatsApp chatbot also, which is very significant tool, because today large population use WhatsApp as a very important communication tool. And when you talk about WhatsApp, then when you talk to chatbot, it will respond to you. You see this thing in banks very significantly, but healthcare it is very important, because you need something which is very urgent. So as soon as when you provide your sample and your result is ready through your WhatsApp, no need to visit the lab, you will able to receive your report on PDF form on your WhatsApp. Similarly, you can book appointment, you can reschedule your appointment, you can also understand what are the tests available, what are the description directory of services in terms of pricing, and technical detail is also available through WhatsApp. Mobile applications, and we cannot run away from the importance of mobile application in laboratory and in digitalization. So we are happy that we have particularly the three important application: patient application, home visit technician application, and logistic application. So first two is being used for the walk-in customer, and logistic application is being used for all the hospitals or clinic from where the blood samples are collected. So hospital is aware that driver is on the way, he is coming, he is going to pick up, what time he is coming. Similarly, customer is able to understand that he is booking a home visit, and he is able to see where is his technician reached, and he will able to understand that he will be here in 2 to 3 minutes, or it is going to take time. Similarly, when we talk about a very important part, it's online payment and booking. And we have a complete portal where customer can go select branch, timing, and pay in advance, so that when he comes to our lab, he need not to wait. He comes to us with a barcode which is just scanned, and then his registration is being done. Similarly, in the discussion, Dr. Ola also touch upon very important point, that a lot of government uh, uh, requirement are coming up significantly on lab, on data and integration. And very importantly, one of the important digitalization aspect is we saw in COVID, which gives us opportunity, that every test what we perform, as soon as we register the sample and we release the result, it should data should go to Hasna, which is for all boards. It is end-to-end integrated. There is no manual entry. As soon as you enter, it will go to Hasna, and once report is ready, it will positive or negative will reach to us. This is very important, that online payment and booking, which is going to be a future, because this will create a virtual lab ultimately. When we talk of trend report, which I spoke earlier, now again at the cost of repetition, I want to highlight that historical data is available as a trend line, and this is not only helpful to consumer or patient, but it is also very helpful to for treating consultant, because he will able to see that how his patient is managing, or maybe not able to manage a particular test value, which is very very important for clinical diagnosis, or maybe future treatment. So this is all about digital strategy. These are the ways to go, and every lab may be required to do this, because ultimately consumer is changing, consumer is asking something which is very important. Now, we talk about everything, but one of the important part is data which is available with us. If we talk about multiple labs which are operating for many years, they have huge database, maybe in TBs and TB, the database. Now, this data, these are the core value for any company, because when you can understand it, you can understand the disease pattern, and very importantly, the cleaning data and building algorithm. This is a part of significant digitalization. Happy to share with you that we are working with one of a company which is using algorithm and giving complete detail on customer, that look, this is the customer who was doing HbA1c very frequently, but from last 1 year he has not done. Either he has not done HbA1c, or he is going to somewhere else. So I am not worried if he has gone to some other lab and done. But importantly, if I check with him that from last 1 year he has stopped checking HbA1c, this is the serious. So I will get opportunity to serve society in terms of reminding that what are required from you, that you were supposed to do your HbA1c, but it is not being done. So a lot of algorithm that customers or patient with abnormal HbA1c and abnormal cholesterol, the patient with abnormal vitamin D and abnormal TSH level. This is the combination and algorithms which is being created by third party, which we are using very significantly, and we get very significant feedback from customer. They thank us particularly for reminding them to take care of their health, reminding them to come for testing. There is very less of a commercial angle to it, but more angle is customer retention. The more angle is customer satisfaction, and customers should feel that look, this is the brand which is taking care of our health. Similarly, data analytics and monetization, ultimately you will able to advertise, you will able to have a subscription based model which talks about healthcare control, or judging and looking into inner health. So this is on data strategy, and this is all about digital. But uh, uh, I am sure, and all of us are very sure, this is going to be a future. Digitalization is the only way to take care of our customer, and treating individual customer as an individual customer, and not as only test value. Thank you. This is any Any question and anything? Maybe I will pause here.
Thank you very much, Mr. Defaqar. Actually, we are closing. We're coming to the closing of the Journal Club. So this is the first Saudi Society of Clinical Chemistry Journal Club with a new flavor. We are presenting the experience from the private sector to complete the story of COVID-19 pandemic. So we have plenty of time for questions. Actually, there's a question for Dr. Ola. So this question comes from your very good friend Rania Bider, and she is asking you, how do you see the future of clinical laboratories after COVID-19 pandemic is over?
Okay, so maybe I already mentioned this in the last 2 slides in the presentation, but since we already build our capabilities, so now most of the labs that are running COVID-19 acquired a lot of machines, I'm talking about the molecular biology, of course, section. We acquired a lot of machines. We trained a lot of personnel. Now, actually, with the drop in the COVID-19 testing nowadays, we are left with the machines and with the trained personnel. So I think it's a good opportunity to expand the scope, maybe run tests that were usually in the send out list, but now we can start to introduce these tests in-house. We can start to make use of these skillful, trained people in something that, there will be nothing, at least I think there will be nothing like this in the future, but we never knew. We never knew. So yes.
I hope.
Yeah. Yeah. So the capabilities that were built should be used to introduce new tests that were not present before. I think that's it.
Okay, perfect. The second question maybe for Mr. Defaqar. You talked about how transformation has actually generated tons and big data. And this big data can be used actually to personalize the treatment of the patient. Can you elaborate more on this?
So, give you example that maybe Al Burj has almost 7 TB of database from so many years. Now, this database is not only about a patient with normal values, but more importantly is the people, those who are with chronic disease ailment. So we are talking of HbA1c, we are talking of cholesterol, we are talking of all kind of markers which are to be monitored for long term. Now, as I said in my presentation, that when we see the database, there are almost 30% of customers, those who are supposed to do HbA1c very frequently, but from last 5 years, 6 years, they were abnormal for 3, 4 values, and then later on they did not see. Now, this is the great opportunity to serve the society when Vision 2030 also speaks about the wellness part and speaks about the healthy society. This is very important that we are reach out to the people and then say that, look, you were supposed to do. If you have done, fine, no problem. But if you have not done, I think this is the time you should check your HbA1c. Similarly, on other part, if you see the cholesterol level, and Dr. Zuhair, you have been working on this very significantly. And all of us are aware that unless and until you keep on regularly following up with even our family members also, people tend to forget. They stop exercising. They forget that these are the food items which need to be avoided. So ultimately, this database is giving it's a strength. I'll tell you, it's a strength of any brand, that having so much of database, customer base, where you can reach out to your customer and make them aware that this is the way the disease need to be maintained. Although practically it requires a lot of algorithm, it requires a lot of artificial intelligence model, but this is possible because there are multi available which you can plug and play, so that significantly your database is secured and you are able to reach to multiple people.
Great. So maybe the third question goes to Dr. Ala. So Dr. Ala, during this pandemic, you have seen a big shift or hiring at many sectors, mainly the private sectors. And you have noticed that there's some kind of, let's say that there's some competency issues in many of the candidates. can you give an advice to the candidate who were trying to look for, let's say, a career in either private or government? How would they improve their competency and increasing their productivity?
Okay, so here's the thing. I mean, in the during the studying days or during the faculty days, so they just touch bases about some basic techniques about things, but the practical experience is never there. Of course, no single practical experience had ever been there before this time of the pandemic. So I think my recommendation to anyone that you should go to any of the big laboratories that are actually running thousands of samples and you ask for an opportunity for training. The problem, Dr. Zohair, is that people or the candidates were coming to look for a job. They were job seekers. They were job seekers without any experience and without even an intention to spend some time for as a trainee, like 2 weeks or 1 month even. But if you want to build your career, if you want to actually be skilled in what you are going to do, so yes, you have to invest your time. You have to work for free. You have to do some training. You have to seek for training in any place and get it. You have to spend long working hours in the lab. I mean, I've seen issues related to commitment. I've seen issues related to everything. I've seen people who want to work for 8 hours and go home. I've seen people who are debating about working late at night. So, regardless anything, if you want to be actually skilled in what you are going to do, then you have to spend effort and spend some time in learning. And the learning opportunity was never like this before.
I agree. I heard. Uh, the first question goes to Mr. Zulfiqar. With digital transformation, is digital transformation actually expensive? Is the transformation worth it? Is it going to add anything to a lab, whether it's private or government?
So, Dr. Zuer, very important and very good question. And you know that digitalization is going to be way of life. So there are no choices available. It's a compulsion for everybody today or tomorrow to be digitally active. Now, this is nothing to do with your brand image or nothing to do with any regulatory requirement. This has to do with your consumer. This has to do with your customer, because your customer is seeing the change and he's expecting similar kind of treatment from everybody today. If you compare the lab walk-in, maybe in government, public sector or private sector, it's way different compared to what it used to happen 1 year back and what is today. Now, consumer or your patient, they want everything at their fingertip. They want, with few clicks they want their report, with few clicks they want their appointment. They want to pay and come to the lab. Earlier they used to come and pay at a lab. So this is the requirement. The people, those who are not understanding or maybe will delay, ultimately they have to do, but they will do at very late stage when consumer will feel that, look, these people are not taking care of us, where they will start comparing and they will have better choice, and then they will definitely adopt to the better options. And in terms of costly, eh, there are two sides of it. When we talk of value versus the kind of benefit it is going to give. So cost benefit ratio, if you see, it's not at all expensive.
Great. I agree. Dr. Ola, a question from Mahmoud Yunis. Does a vaccination decrease throughput of COVID-19 sample in the laboratory or increase the number? Will we see increase in number of ordering COVID-19 or decrease after vaccinating everyone?
Actually, as I said, the testing here is related to things. I think it is not related to vaccination. So the thing here is that people who are asking for the test are they lie mainly under one of two categories. The first category is someone who is actually looking for a diagnosis. He's suspecting a diagnosis, or he's a contact or something like this, some symptoms. So this person is looking for a diagnosis, so they are seeking for COVID PCR testing. And I think over 80% of this category, they are not visiting private labs now, because the government is providing this for free to people for several months now, for over a year now. So people who are basically seeking for a diagnosis, usually they go to the drive-through of the government and they are doing the test for free, except of course of some people who are actually still visiting the private labs. The other category is the travelers. So people who are looking for a negative PCR test in order to travel to a certain country where there are regulations there, so that in order for you to get into the country, you have to have a negative PCR within 48 or 72 hours. Maybe this is the part where the vaccination or the number of vaccinated people affected only when the regulations changed inside some countries. So taking Egypt, for example, until maybe 2 months ago, or maybe 2 to 3 months ago, in order for you to get into Egypt, you have to have a valid PCR, a negative PCR result within the past 72 hours, regardless your vaccination status. Now the regulations changed, and if you are fully vaccinated, then you do not need to do a PCR test before travel, which affected markedly the number of cases that, or the number of people who were seeking for PCR testing in the lab, because now they don't need the test while traveling. So I hope I answered you, Mahmoud.
So still wait and see.
Yeah.
Mr. Zulfiqar, a question. There's a new, yes, there's a kind of a new service that we're seeing nowadays is the drive-through. Are we going to see more drive-through lab tests in the future? And is it something? I mean, is it something regulated? Something that you would encourage and support?
Yeah, naturally. So drive-through is a concept. You know that in food industry, it's a very well accepted concept where you see a lot of coffee shops are being using this concept earlier also. And day one, either if you take out the service point of it, it's very convenient because today traveling to the place, parking and going maybe on first floor, second floor, it's always time consuming. Now you are within your car, where is your which is your private place. You are comfortable. You are rolling down your windows when you are at a collection point. So it's definitely very convenient, and I think very well accepted. This concept, in particularly in KSA market, we saw in particularly UAE also, it picked up after COVID because there was fear of not going to lab. However, for blood collection, it's very good initiative, and I think you will see multiple labs or people, those who are going to venture into it, and practically even Al Burj is also thinking it, and it's regulated, so you need to create particularly you get a license for lab. You don't get a license for only a collection of blood. So you get license for lab. You practically keep your bare minimum lab there, and then you get a license. So it's very regulated, and it's allowed. So maybe you will see in future multiple blood collection drive-throughs also.
Dr. Ola, a question for you. You talked about in-house testing developed during COVID-19. Is this something? Is this phenomena is going to be just appeared a bubble and then it goes away, or are we going to see more in-house developed assay during different pandemics?
Hopefully not during pandemics. Hopefully we can see that without a pandemic. So yes, I think it is something that once it started, no, I don't think it's a bubble or anything, because again, it is also related to the capabilities. So a lot of laboratories, whether governmental or private laboratories, they started to build their capabilities in order to start to introduce laboratory developed tests. So now the research and development capabilities are there. So for example, as I mentioned in my presentation, in Al Borj, we already developed the primers in order to, so we are providing a test to detect PCR test for SARS-CoV-2. So the research team is there, the machines are there, the software that was used in order to test the primers and test the everything was there. The troubleshooting actually was there. So when you have the troubleshooting, you know exactly from where you are going to start from the next time if you are going to develop something. So I think yes, we are going to see more and more, but if it is not during a pandemic, then I think all the regulations will be back. So the thorough verification will be needed, the long time for approval will be needed. Hopefully, we might skip this in the future and go to a fast track again. Regulated, yes, but a fast track. So yeah, we are going to see more and more in the future, near future. Dr. Zuhair, you are muted.
Yes. Last question to Mr. Zulfiqar. We have just a few minutes. Do you think with with the big data that we have, can developers work on them to provide new services in the field of personalized improvement, safety improvement of services, reducing cost? Would that be a common theme in the future?
Yeah, this is very critical because big data is not all about the data of your consumer. Big data is all about the kind of kit you use, the consumption. It talks about your turnaround time. So when you have a huge database, and when you can clean the data, and it should be a data in form, it can always be presented to the developers, which can work and which can give you opportunities which are available to reduce your consumption, opportunity to build the algorithm around your reducing turnaround time, how effectively you use, which people call it kit utilization index, which is very important, that one kit how many tests can be done, and where are the wastage, how can you reduce error, where are the areas where pre-analytically you are not able to match the requirement. So of course, yes, it's possible, and it is, blockchain is coming a big way in terms of not only patient health but also in overall operations also.
Thank you so much. I think this is all the time we have for this Journal Club. I would like to thank our distinguished speakers, Dr. Al Ghaddar, the Chief Medical Officer at Al Burj, Mr. Zulfiqar Sheikh, the Chief Operating Officer, for this nice and comprehensive presentation in a different flavor. For CME's Hour, there's a link going to be sent to your email. You fill your information and your registration number, and then you will automatically get the 2 hours of the activity. On behalf of the Society of Clinical Chemistry, we would like to thank you very much for attending this activity and wish you all the best, and have a nice evening and be safe. Thank you, Dr. Ala. Thank you, Mr. Zulfiqar.
Thank you, Dr. Zuhair.
Thank you.
Thank you.